Hi, Andrea here. I hope you're doing well. In this video, let's talk about the metabolism of sugar or sugars and alcohol and what they do to our body when we ingest them. Now, obviously, big disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physician, and I publish these videos just for informational purposes, so please take this information as it is and do your own research, talk to your doctor. So let's talk about sugars first. And when we talk about sugars, it's probably useful to clarify the definition, because usually when you say sugar, you probably think about table sugar, or at least that is what I usually thought my whole life. So let's clarify the terminology here. So there are many types of sugars, from simple to complex, and they are all carbohydrates. So let's start from the simple sugars that are called monosaccharides, which are basically the simplest form of sugar. And the three main monosaccharides or simple sugars that pertain to our diet are glucose, fructose, and galactose. Then a more complex form of sugars is the disaccharides, and those are basically a molecule of a monosaccharide combined with another molecule of another monosaccharide or simple sugar. So you can think of sucrose, which is actually table sugar, what we usually think when we say sugar. That is a disaccharide and is a combination of one molecule of glucose and one molecule of fructose. And lactose is another example of a disaccharide, so it's the milk sugar, and that is a combination of glucose, 50% glucose and 50% galactose. And then on the more complex side of sugars, you have chains of monosaccharides all bound together. And for example, starch is one of those. Cellulose is also a complex carb, a complex sugar. Glycogen, which is the way we store glucose in our body. So glycogen is also complex sugar or complex carbohydrate. So keep this in mind. Sugar is a generic term that we use to refer to any of those. And each of those sugars is metabolized slightly differently in our body and has different effects. And in particular today, let's focus on glucose and fructose, and subsequently on alcohol or ethanol, because it's very similar to fructose. So let's start from glucose. So when you think about glucose, think about bread, pasta, pizza, bagels, even table sugar contains glucose, and all the pastries, a croissant. So before talking about what happens when you ingest those foods, let's clarify another concept that you might know already, but just for completeness, related to carbohydrate foods, there are two main concepts of glycemic index and glycemic load. The glycemic index basically measures how fast that particular food spikes blood glucose, commonly known as blood sugar, but remember, it's blood glucose. And think of the glycemic load in terms of dose. So it's basically how much glucose is in that particular food multiplied by the glycemic index. So with that said, what happens when you ingest a carbohydrate with glucose? It will reach the bloodstream, it will raise insulin, because we know from other talks that we need a blood glucose in a certain range. Our body tightly regulates that, because we cannot have blood glucose too high or too low. Both are very dangerous for us. So our mechanism to deal with that is insulin. So you eat that glucose, it goes into your bloodstream, it raises blood glucose. Here comes insulin, your pancreas produces it, and it gets the glucose and it distributes into your body all over. And roughly 80% goes to all your body, muscles, and tissues, etc. And 20% approximately will be metabolized in the liver. And in all these places, glucose will go through a pathway that basically will be used as energy immediately. It will be stored as glycogen, either in the liver or in the muscles. And any excess will then go through a process called de novo lipogenesis and will actually create fat. Maybe a useful way to visualize the amount of glucose that gets distributed to all your body is thinking about the blood glucose level. So in general, a normal blood glucose level could be around 90 milligrams per deciliter of blood. Let's say 100, just to make calculations easier. And an average person carries 5 liters of blood in their body. Now, obviously, it depends on the size, sex, if you're a kid or an adult, but average adult, let's say 5 liters. Let's make it easy. It means that any given time, your body wants maximum 5 grams of glucose. 5 grams of glucose is nothing. It's very little. So if you think about when you eat a pizza, or when you eat a bagel, when you eat anything that contains glucose, look at the total carbohydrates, remove the fiber, and let's approximate that total carbohydrates minus fiber is the total amount of glucose. Then you will discover that maybe with that particular item that you're eating, you are ingesting like 50 grams of glucose. And your blood wants only 5 grams total. So you will need to displace all of that glucose throughout your body. But again, glucose at the end of the day provides energy. And it's distributed all over our body. All our cells can use it. Fantastic. So yes, if you overeat, if you overconsume the carbohydrates with glucose, not good, because you will not use all of it. Our glycogen stores are limited, so some of it will get converted into fat, and also over time it will influence hyperinsulinemia, insulin resistance, etc., etc. So not good.